Embracing Insight. Welcome back to another weekly Wisdom with Pastor Cheryl. Today we look at the text from Proverbs, the introduction to this book, beginning with chapter 1 and going from verses 1 through 7. Let's read them. The Proverbs of Solomon, King David's son from Israel. Their purpose is to teach wisdom and discipline, to help one understand wise sayings. They provide insightful instruction which is righteous, just, and full of integrity. They make the naive mature, the young knowledgeable and discreet. The wise hear them and grow in wisdom. Those with understanding gain guidance. They help one understand proverbs and difficult sayings, the words of the wise and their puzzles. Wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And as we think about the words of this passage, what wisdom means and how important it is to our lives, to our maturing and growing as human beings, and certainly as Christians, people of faith, this introductory passage to this book explains why it's written. In fact, the Common English Bible, the translation that I was reading from, titles it Purpose of Proverbs. So that we understand that the reason that this book was written was to provide instruction. We attribute most of the writings to King David's son Solomon, who would become king, who was known for his wisdom, known from an incident in his life where he displayed great wisdom and insight in dealing with a situation that came before him. And isn't that what wisdom requires or offers us? That the beauty and the benefit of having wisdom, of attaining knowledge, coupled with experience, understanding, and insight, is that when we are confronted with life circumstances, whatever it may be, that we can respond to them in a way that integrates the information, the factual information presented to us, the reality of our situation, our lives, how we're able to respond to it, and what's needed and helpful in that moment. So we think about that in relationship, for instance, to our current circumstances of COVID-19. And there's a lot of information out there, and there's information that's conflicting at times that we have to sort through and to see what is accurate, what is helpful and necessary, and what do we do with that information? How do we take it? Do we just continue along as if the world has not changed, or do we use that information and embrace the opportunity to be insightful with it? So insight, and we take that word insight, it means to be in vision. It's like to be in the seeing of information. So you not only have it, but you actually see what it means. You have a greater level of understanding. You have a greater appreciation for its meaning, not just the literal, the factual, but what are the consequences? What are the ramifications of the information? And in this passage, the writer Solomon is really clear to say that wisdom will help you. It helps you to mature. It helps you to grow. The part that I really love when it says the young knowledgeable, because wisdom is not age dependent. I know plenty of very wise young people and those who you would think, given their age, might have more wisdom. But knowledge alone does not give you wisdom. Where it says the young, knowledgeable, and discreet. And that word discreet, and we think about discretion and what that means. And I think commonly we think, oh, that means you're careful with the information that you put out. You're careful with what you say in the moment, with what you share, that you guard your words and you guard the information that you have, that you aren't sharing, for instance, in a gossiping sort of way. Personal and private information that is not yours to share, or that maybe it is yours, but it's not helpful or appropriate to share. Sometimes on social media, and particularly on some posts that I see where people share a lot of information, I often wonder, is this helpful to you? I mean, forget about those of us who are consuming it. Is the sharing of this helpful? Sometimes I think, even in terms of my own YouTube channel, is my sharing of something, is that helpful? Am I practicing discretion? Or am I being indiscreet under the veil of transparency? And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But I think in terms of looking at the meaning of that word discreet, when you think of something being discreet, in some ways it also means to make something that could be big, keep containing it, making it small, minimizing its footprint or its impact to what's appropriate, what's helpful, and what's necessary. So to be discreet in use of words or with power means that you don't say more than needs to be said, or that you don't exert power that does not need to be exerted. You may have it, but does this moment call for it? And discretion is in its essence, in some ways, is an act of humility, to say, I don't have to bring all that I have to bear. And having the wisdom to understand when and what do I need to bring to bear in a given situation is part of this idea of embracing insight. And I think it's also clear that when he says that wisdom begins with fear of the Lord, you couple that with that word discreet. I'm reminded of my Old Testament professor in seminary who talked about humility in these terms, and understanding, yes, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And I'm expounding a little bit on what he said. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. But what he said was, remembering, though, that we might be here, but God is here. Like, God has made us a little lower than the angels, right? According to the psalmist. But God has not made us God. And we are high and lifted up, but we are not God. And humility is understanding that we do have power, and we do have authority, and that we do have impact and influence and agency and control over many things. That we were given dominion as a mark of our responsibility to be caretakers of this earth. But we didn't create it. It doesn't belong to us. We're caretakers, not property owners. And there's a difference. And understanding that difference, that aspect of fearing God, to me, is what enables us to be humble enough to continue to learn. Because I think that at its core, embracing insight is understanding that as much as we have learned in our lifetimes, as much knowledge as we have, as much experience as we have obtained, that we still have more to learn, that we don't know it all. There are others who know more about something than we do, and that's a good thing. We are dependent upon one another. It doesn't mean that we're deficient because we don't know it all. It actually is a sign of strength to recognize how much we don't know. You know, I in my doctoral program, one of the things I said to a friend who was going through the program, I feel like for the first time I've learned how to learn something. Like all these years of school and being, you know, fairly successful at it and doing well, and understanding it's a gift from God to be able to learn in particular ways that make you successful in the educational system. Again, another topic. But that, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm more intelligent. It just means that my particular brand of intelligence works well with our educational system. that we're all gifted, we're all intelligent in our own way and in our sphere. And I think the more that you learn and the more that you embrace learning, and that you look for opportunities to learn from all sources, including those that don't have credentials, that don't have degrees, that don't have, journal articles under their belt, but who have a certain wisdom that comes from a life experience that is not mine, that I can glean from and learn from. And just in general, the embracing of insight, of embracing the fact that there is more to learn, and that God gives us this gift of ever growing knowledge. It is really such a gift, because if we didn't have that, we'd still be, living outside, building fire. Well, we wouldn't have fire, would we? We wouldn't know how to harness energy to create fire if we didn't learn, if we hadn't embraced at some point in human history the learning how to do that. And every bit of, and that was technology then. And every step forward, we continue to grow. I think that's what part of what at least Jesus meant when Jesus said that you will do greater things. Not just partly because Jesus was going to the right hand of the Father and would be interceding for us, and God and his power as God would be, he would resume his throne in heaven and exert that power, and that power that that God has designated to us through the Holy Spirit would be even greater. But I also think it's because the path of creation and human history as a small part of creation, but the whole path of creation is growing. It's expansive, and we're part of that chain. And even in our small, discrete lives, we get to participate in that growing of knowledge and understanding and wisdom. And so, like the proverb writer, I am embracing insight. I am embracing growing in understanding, growing in knowledge, of learning, and not worrying about the fact that I didn't know something 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 minutes ago, but that if I've learned it now, that I can now move forward with that knowledge behind me. And so if I'm concerned about things that I did before, when I didn't know something, that should propel me not to feel shame about my past, but to be more resolved in my future to embrace more and more insight. Let grace enter into the spaces of what we didn't know and ways in which we could have done better in the past. Grace meets us there. God's abundant, amazing grace meets us there. But God's grace and mercy and love should also propel us to go forward in wisdom and knowledge and insight. Embrace it, my friends. And as you do, friends, as always, love God, love neighbor, and love yourself. Until next time, be blessed.